Ren's lungs burned as he chased the skinny appraiser through the massive base of the wolf clan. His legs felt like lead, and his breath came in ragged gasps. He wasn't built for this kind of exertion, but he couldn't stop, not when the appraiser knew about his copy skill. Just as Ren was about to give up, the appraiser suddenly stopped in his tracks. A dagger flew through the air, embedding itself in the man's skull with a sickening thunk. The appraiser crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Ren froze, his heart pounding. He looked up and saw the source of the dagger, a massive wolf demi-human, towering over the scene with an aura of raw power. This had to be the boss of the Wolf Fang clan. The boss had been aiming for Lyra, who stood a few feet away, her daggers drawn and her expression fierce. She had dodged the attack. Ren glanced around and realized the area was littered with the bodies of Wolf Clan members. Lyra had clearly been busy. It was now a one-on-one fight between her and the boss, and the tension in the air was high. Ren wanted to help, but he had no idea how to fight. Then he remembered his newly acquired appraisal skill. He focused on the system window in his mind, recalling the instructions: focus on a target and think, appraise. Ren turned his attention to the boss and concentrated. A faint glow surrounded the wolf demi-human, and a notification appeared. Name: Garrick, Wolf Fang Clan Boss. Skills: Mega Fireball, A rank, a destructive fireball capable of mass destruction. Command Howl, B rank, forces members of the same species to submit. Moonlight Heal, B rank, heals the target when used at night. Ren's eyes widened. Each of these skills was powerful, but before he could decide which one to copy, the boss noticed him. Another pest. Garrick growled, his eyes narrowing. You're all the same, thinking you can take me down. I'll crush you first. Before Ren could react, Garrick lunged at him, moving faster than Ren could comprehend. A massive fist slammed into Ren's chest, sending him flying backward. He hit the ground hard, blood spilling from his mouth as pain radiated through his body. Ren, look out! Lyra shouted, but it was too late. Lyra moved like a blur, her stealth speed skill activating as she appeared behind Garrick. She plunged her dagger into his back, but the boss roared in fury and threw her off with a powerful swing of his arm. Lyra landed gracefully, but the boss was now enraged. That's it! Garrick bellowed, his voice shaking the ground. I'm burning everything to ashes. He raised his hand, and a massive fireball began to form above him. The flames grew larger and larger, illuminating the night sky after destroying the roof of the building they were in. Ren stared in horror as the fireball grew to an enormous size, threatening to reduce the entire town to rubble. Garrick laughed maniacally. It's night now. Even if you manage to hurt me, my Moonlight Heal will fix everything. You can't win. Just as Garrick was about to hurl the fireball, a voice cut through the chaos. Found you. An old but fit man appeared out of nowhere, moving with a speed that rivaled Lyra's. He wielded a sword that glowed with a faint blue light, and in a single, fluid motion, he sliced Garrick into tiny pieces. The fireball dissipated harmlessly as the boss's body fell to the ground in chunks. The old man didn't stop there. He raised his hand, and a burst of fire erupted from his palm, reducing Garrick's remains to ashes. Let's see you recover from this, the old man muttered, his voice calm but filled with authority. He turned to Ren and Lyra, his sharp eyes scanning them. This is no place for kids, he said sternly. Go home. Ren and Lyra spent the next few days recovering from their injuries. The healer they had hired had drained most of Ren's gold, leaving him nearly broke. Despite the healer's efforts, both of them were still sore and bruised, a constant reminder of their encounter with the Wolf Fang clan. Lyra, claiming she had nowhere else to go, decided to stay with Ren at the inn he had rented. Ren didn't mind, her company was a welcome distraction, and he couldn't deny that he found her intriguing. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. One afternoon, Ren remembered the room full of gold he had stumbled upon while escaping the Wolf Fang clan's base. He had taken as much as he could carry, but it hadn't been enough to cover the healer's fees. Hoping to find more, he returned to the base, only to discover that the gold was gone. The room was empty, save for a few scattered coins. Figures, Ren muttered, kicking a pebble in frustration. Can't catch a break in this world. As he turned to leave, his stomach growled loudly, followed by an even louder rumble from Lyra's direction. She smirked at him. Guess it's time for lunch. They found a small tavern in town and settled in for a meal. As they ate, Ren discreetly used his appraisal skill to scan the other peoples around him, one by one. He was looking for a skill worth copying, but most of the abilities he saw were underwhelming, basic strength enhancements, minor elemental spells, and the like. Nothing that impressed him. While they ate, Ren asked Lyra about the next town over. She gave him directions but advised him to register at the local adventurers guild before traveling. It's safer that way, she said. Plus, you'll have access to quests and resources. Ren nodded, making a mental note to visit the guild. Later that day, Ren and Lyra made their way to the adventurers guild. The place was bustling with activity, adventurers of all shapes and sizes moving about. As Ren was registering, a loud, arrogant voice caught his attention. That's right. I took down a massive monster all by myself. A red-haired fighter boasted, his chest puffed out with pride. It was nothing for someone with my skills. Ren's eyes narrowed. He activated his appraisal skill, focusing on the fighter. Name: Kale. Skill: Fire Mastery, A rank. Description: allows the user to wield a wide range of fire-based skills, scaling with the user's strength. Ren's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of skill he needed. He waited for the right moment, then stretched out his hand and whispered, "Copy." A warm sensation spread through him, and a notification appeared. Skill acquired: Fire Mastery, A rank. Attempts remaining: 8/10. Ren grinned. This was a game changer. As they left the guild, Lyra turned to Ren. Well, this is where we part ways, she said, her tone casual but her eyes lingering on him. Take care of yourself, Ren. Before he could respond, she leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. Ren froze, his face turning red. He felt a pang of guilt. He had just copied her stealth speed skill without her knowing. Lyra, wait, he said, stopping her as she turned to leave. There's something I need to tell you. She paused, then smiled knowingly. I know. A kiss traded to learn a skill, right? Ren blinked, stunned. How did you? Lyra chuckled. I'm an assassin, Ren. I notice things. Besides, a few days ago, I took something from you, and you still haven't noticed. Ren's eyes widened. What did you take? She shook her head, still smiling. I'm not telling. Let's just say it's something very rare and valuable, even among nobles. Before Ren could press her further, she waved and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Later that evening, Lyra sat alone in a quiet corner of the town, holding a small, glowing orb in her hands. It was the same orb Ren had brought with him from the goddess's realm, a rare and powerful artifact that even nobles would kill to possess. You really are full of surprises, Ren, she murmured, a sly smile playing on her lips. But this changes everything. After parting ways with Lyra, Ren decided it was time to get stronger. The encounter with the Wolf Fang clan had shown him just how vulnerable he was in this world. He needed to master his skills and become capable of handling whatever challenges lay ahead. With this in mind, he set out for a dense, monster-infested forest he had heard about from the guild. It was a place where adventurers went to train, or to die. The forest was as terrifying as it was beautiful. Towering trees blocked out most of the sunlight, casting the forest floor in a perpetual twilight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the sounds of growls, screeches, and rustling foliage filled the air. Ren quickly realized that this was no ordinary forest, it was a place where only the strong survived. At first, Ren relied heavily on his stealth speed skill to avoid confrontation. He moved silently through the underbrush, staying out of sight and out of reach of the monsters that roamed the area. His fire mastery skill was still too weak to be of much use, and he didn't want to risk drawing attention to himself by using it recklessly. The first few days were a nightmare. Ren barely slept, constantly on edge as he evaded one monster after another. He ate whatever edible plants he could find and drank from a small stream that ran through the forest. His clothes became torn and dirty, and his body ached from the constant tension and lack of rest. After a week of running and hiding, Ren finally decided it was time to fight back. He spotted a lone monster, a small, wolf-like creature with glowing red eyes, and decided it was a good target for his first battle. He activated his stealth speed skill, closing the distance between them in an instant. The monster snarled and lunged at him, but Ren was ready. He focused on his fire mastery skill, summoning a small flame in his hand. The flame was weak, barely more than a flicker, but it was enough to startle the monster. Ren used the distraction to land a solid punch, knocking the creature off balance. He followed up with a burst of fire, this time stronger, and the monster let out a final howl before collapsing. Ren stood over the creature, breathing heavily. It wasn't much of a victory, but it was a start. He felt a surge of confidence as he realized he could actually fight back. From that moment on, he resolved to face every monster head-on. Over the next few weeks, Ren's skills improved dramatically. He fought monsters of all shapes and sizes, from giant spiders to venomous snakes to towering beasts with razor-sharp claws. Each battle pushed him to his limits, but he refused to back down. He learned to control his fire mastery skill, creating larger and more powerful flames. He combined it with his stealth speed skill, using his agility to outmaneuver his enemies and strike with precision. The forest became his training ground, and Ren embraced the challenges it presented. He started to enjoy the thrill of battle, the rush of adrenaline as he faced down a new opponent. He even began to experiment with his skills, discovering new ways to use them in combat. For example, he learned to create a wall of fire to block off enemies or use a burst of flame to propel himself forward, increasing his speed even further. One day, after defeating a particularly tough monster, Ren noticed something strange. As the creature's body dissolved into smoke, a small, glowing orb was left behind. He picked it up, feeling a faint warmth in his hand. Remembering what the guild staff had told him, he realized it was a monster core, a valuable item that could be sold for a high price. From then on, Ren made it a point to collect the cores from every monster he defeated. He stored them in a makeshift pouch he had fashioned from his tattered clothes. By the end of the month, he had amassed thousands of cores, each one a testament to his growing strength. With his training complete and his pouch overflowing with monster cores, Ren decided it was time to leave the forest. However, he quickly realized he had no idea where to go. He had forgotten the directions Lyra had given him, and the dense trees made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. After wandering aimlessly for a day, Ren finally spotted the distant silhouette of a grand palace towering above the trees. Relieved, he made his way toward it, eventually arriving at the capital city. Ren's appearance drew immediate attention. His clothes were torn and ragged from weeks of battling monsters, but his body was now chiseled and refined, a testament to his rigorous training. He smiled nervously as people stared, making his way to an outdoor map of the city. Locating the guild, he headed there to sell the few monster cores he had carried with him. The guild staff were shocked by the sheer number of cores Ren had, but they agreed to process the sale. With the money he earned, Ren bought new clothes, finally blending in with the city's inhabitants. Using his enhanced speed, he dashed back and forth between the forest and the guild, retrieving and selling all the hidden cores. By the time he finished, it was late at night. The guild informed him that the payment for his cores would be substantial, but they needed the guild master's approval to release the funds. Ren wasn't in a rush, he couldn't carry that much money anyway, so he decided to find an inn for the night. As Ren left the guild and turned a corner, he saw a figure running off into the shadows. On the ground lay a young girl, her elegant dress soaked in blood. She had multiple cuts and was barely conscious. Ren rushed to her side, and she weakly grabbed his arm. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Before passing out from blood loss, she pointed toward the castle and gasped, "Take me there." Ren hesitated. The girl's dress suggested she was someone important, perhaps even royalty. Realizing there was no time to waste, he scooped her up and activated his stealth speed skill. In an instant, he was at the castle gates, moving so fast that the guards didn't even notice him. Bursting through the castle doors, Ren shouted, "Someone, help!" The castle staff rushed to the scene, their eyes widening in horror as they recognized the girl in Ren's arms. "The princess!" Someone screamed. Chaos erupted. Guards surrounded Ren, their weapons drawn. "Intruder! Let her go!" They yelled, assuming he was the one who had harmed her. Ren gently laid the princess on the ground and raised his hands in surrender. "I'm not the enemy. I found her like this." But the guards weren't listening. Before Ren could explain further, a binding spell immobilized him, rendering him unable to move. He was quickly surrounded and disarmed, his protests falling on deaf ears. Ren was dragged to the castle dungeons, his mind racing. He had saved the princess, but now he was being treated like a criminal. As the heavy cell door slammed shut behind him, he slumped against the cold stone wall, wondering how things had gone so wrong. "This isn't how I imagined my first day in the capital," he muttered, staring at the dim light filtering through the barred window. After a long and restless night in the castle dungeon, Ren finally fell asleep, exhausted from the chaos of the previous day. When he woke up, he found himself staring into the piercing eyes of a young man who looked every bit like royalty. The man's expression was stern, his arms crossed as he loomed over Ren. "Answer me now," the young man demanded. "Why were you with my sister last night? And why did she look like that?" Ren blinked, still groggy from sleep. It took him a moment to realize the man was referring to the princess he had saved. He quickly explained what had happened, how he had found her injured in the alley, how she had begged him to take her to the castle, and how he had rushed her there using his speed. The young man listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When Ren finished, the man turned on his heel and walked away without another word. Ren barely had time to process what had happened before the guards entered his cell. "You're coming with us," one of them said, unlocking the door. "The king wants to see you." Ren was escorted to the grand throne room, where the king sat on an ornate throne, his presence commanding and regal. Before the king could speak, the doors burst open, and the princess herself ran in, her face flushed and her hair slightly disheveled. "Let him go," she shouted, ignoring the servants who tried to stop her. "He's innocent." Ren was relieved to see her alive and well, though he couldn't help but feel a little shocked. Just last night, she had been on the brink of death, covered in blood. Now, she looked perfectly healthy, as if nothing had happened. They must have an incredible healer, Ren thought. The princess turned to the king and explained everything. She had snuck out of the castle the previous night to get some fresh air, but she was attacked by a group of assailants. They had spoken as if she was in the way of their master's plan. Ren, she said, had found her and saved her life. "Father," she said, her voice firm, "he is a hero, not a criminal." The king listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. When the princess finished, he turned to Ren and bowed his head slightly. "I apologize for the misunderstanding," he said. "And I thank you for saving my beloved daughter, Alana." Alana smiled at Ren and introduced herself properly. "I'm Alana, first princess of this kingdom. Thank you for what you did." Ren nodded, still a bit overwhelmed by the situation. I just did what anyone would have done, he said. The king smiled. You're too modest. Is there anything you desire as a reward? Name it, and it shall be yours. Ren hesitated. He didn't want to seem greedy, but he couldn't help but wonder about the king's skills and the healer who had healed Alana so effortlessly. Sensing Ren's hesitation, the king chuckled. I can see you're too humble to ask for anything, the king said. Very well. I'll have you escorted to the treasure room. Choose something for yourself. As Ren was led to the treasure room, he couldn't resist trying to use his appraisal skill on the king. However, he could only see one skill, Conceal A rank, which hid the king's other abilities. Ren wanted to copy it but couldn't find an opportunity, until he pretended to stumble, stretching out his hand and whispering, "Copy." A notification appeared in his mind. Skill acquired, Conceal A rank. Attempts remaining, 6/10. Ren smiled inwardly but kept his expression neutral. When they reached the treasure room, he was stunned by the sight of mountains of gold, rare artifacts, and magical items. However, he didn't feel right taking anything extravagant. I don't want to be rude but I don't need anything, Ren said. I already have a lot of funds coming from the monster cores I sold to the guild. The king raised an eyebrow. Monster cores? How many did you sell? A few thousand, Ren replied. The king's eyes widened. You must be quite strong to have gathered so many. Still, I insist on rewarding you. How do you carry your belongings? Ren shrugged. I don't have much, but if I need to, I carry things little by little. The king smiled. Then I have the perfect gift for you. He gestured to a small, ornate box, which a servant brought forward. Inside was a shimmering ring. This is a dimensional ring. Only 10 are known to exist in the world. It can store a vast amount of items, and it even preserves them, preventing them from aging. To use it, simply think the command, store, to place items inside, and release, to retrieve them. You can also mentally check the contents of the ring at any time. Ren was speechless. The ring was an incredible gift, one that would solve all his storage problems. He accepted it gratefully, slipping it onto his finger. He thanked the king and the king smiled. As they left the treasure room, the guard returned with the healer the king had summoned earlier. The healer, a calm and serene woman, placed her hands on Ren's shoulders. In an instant, his fatigue and lingering pain vanished, replaced by a surge of energy. How do you feel? The healer asked. Amazing, Ren replied, marveling at how quickly he had been healed. He couldn't help but think about how useful her high heal S-rank skill would be. As she turned to leave, Ren stretched out his hand as if waving goodbye, but he whispered, "Copy." A notification appeared. Skill acquired, high heal S-rank. Attempts remaining, 5/10. Ren grinned inwardly, feeling more powerful than ever. The king clapped his hands, drawing Ren's attention. Now that you're healed, how about a friendly spar? I love a good battle, and from what you've told me, you must be quite strong. Don't worry, I'll try to hold back. Ren's eyes widened. Wait, what? A spar? With you? The king laughed. Yes, with me. Consider it a test of your strength. Come, let's head to the training grounds. As they made their way to the training grounds, Ren's mind raced. He had just acquired 2 great skills, but facing the king in combat was an entirely different challenge. He didn't know what to expect, but one thing was certain, this was going to be a battle he would never forget.